It amazes us to hear accounts of the valor that liberty arouses in the hearts of those who defend it. But who could believe reports of what goes on every day among the inhabitants of some countries? Who could really believe that one man alone may mistreat 100,000 and deprive them of their liberty? Who would credit such a report if he merely heard it, without being present to witness the event? And if this condition occurred only in distant lands and were reported to us, which one among us would not assume the tale to be imagined or invented, and not really true? Obviously, there is no need of fighting to overcome this single tyrant, for he is automatically defeated if the country refuses consent to its own enslavement. It is not necessary to deprive him of anything, but simply to give him nothing. There is no need that the country make an effort to do anything for itself, provided it does nothing against itself. It is, therefore, the inhabitants themselves who permit, or rather bring about, their own subjection, since by ceasing to submit, they would put an end to their servitude. A people enslaves itself, cuts its own throat, when having a choice between being vassals and being free men. It deserts its liberties and takes on the yoke, gives consent to its own misery, or rather, apparently, welcomes it. If it cost the people anything to recover its freedom, I should not urge action to this end, although there is nothing a human should hold more dear than the restoration of his own natural right to change himself from a beast of burden back to a man, so to speak. I do not demand of him so much boldness. Let him prefer the doubtful security of living wretchedly to the uncertain hope of living as he pleases. What then? If in order to have liberty nothing more is needed than to long for it, if only a simple act of the will is necessary, is there any nation in the world that considers a single wish too high a price to pay in order to recover rights which it ought to be ready to redeem at the cost of its blood? Rights such as their loss must bring all men of honor to the point of feeling life to be unendurable and death itself a deliverance. Everyone knows that the fire from a little spark will increase and blaze ever higher as long as it finds wood to burn, yet without being quenched by water, but merely by finding no more fuel to feed on. It consumes itself, dies down, and is no longer a flame. Similarly, the more tyrants pillage, the more they crave, the more they ruin and destroy, the more one yields to them and obeys them. By that much do they become mightier and more formidable, the readier to annihilate and destroy. But if not one thing is yielded to them, if without any violence they are simply not obeyed, they become naked and undone, as nothing. Just as when the root receives no nourishment, the branch withers and dies. To achieve the good that they desire, the bold do not fear danger, the intelligent do not refuse to undergo suffering. It is the stupid and cowardly who are neither able to endure hardship nor to vindicate their rights. They stop at merely longing for them, and lose through timidity the valor roused by the effort to claim their rights, although the desire to enjoy them still remains as part of their nature. A longing common to both the wise and the foolish, to brave men and to cowards, is this longing for all those things which, when acquired, would make them happy and contented. Yet one element appears to be lacking. I do not know how it happens that nature fails to place within the hearts of men a burning desire for liberty, a blessing so great and so desirable that when it is lost, all evils follow thereafter. and even the blessings that remain lose taste, and savor because of their corruption by servitude. Liberty is the only joy upon which men do not seem to insist, for surely, if they really wanted it, they would receive it. Apparently, they refuse this wonderful privilege because it is so easily acquired. Poor, wretched, and stupid peoples, nations determined on your own misfortunes and blind to your own good. You let yourselves be deprived before your own eyes of the best part of your revenues. Your fields are plundered, your homes robbed, your family heirlooms taken away. You live in such a way that you cannot claim a single thing as your own, and it would seem that you consider yourself lucky to be loaned your property, your families, and your very lives. All this havoc, this misfortune, this ruin descends upon you not from alien foes, but from the one enemy whom you yourselves render as powerful as he is, for whom you go bravely to war, for whose greatness you do not refuse to offer your own bodies unto death. He who thus domineers over you has only 2 eyes, only 2 hands, only one body, no more than is possessed by the least man among the infinite numbers dwelling in your cities. He has indeed nothing more than the power that you confer upon him to destroy you. Where has he acquired enough eyes to spy upon you, if you do not provide them yourselves? How can he have so many arms to beat you with, if he does not borrow them from you? The feet that trample down your cities, where does he get them if they are not your own? How does he have any power over you except through you? How would he dare assail you if he had no cooperation from you? What could he do to you if you yourselves did not connive with the thief who plunders you? If you were not accomplices of the murderer who kills you? If you were not traitors to yourselves? You sow your crops in order that he may ravage them. You install and furnish your homes to give them goods to pillage. You rear your daughters that he may gratify his lust. You bring up your children in order that he may confer upon them the greatest privilege he knows, to be led into his battles, to be delivered to butchery, to be made the servants of his greed and the instruments of his vengeance. You yield your bodies unto hard labor, in order that he may indulge in his delight and wallow in the filthy pleasures. You weaken yourselves in order to make him the stronger and the mightier, to hold you in check. From all these indignities, such as the very beasts of the field would not endure, you can deliver yourselves if you try, not by talking, not by taking action, but merely by willing to be free. Resolve to serve no more, and you are at once freed. I do not ask that you place hands upon the tyrant to topple him over, but simply that you support him no longer. Then you will behold him like a great colossus, whose pedestal has been pulled away, fall of his own weight, and break into pieces. Part 2. Liberty is the natural condition of the people. Servitude, however, is fostered when people are raised in subjection. People are trained to adore rules. While freedom is forgotten by many, there are always some who will never submit. Doctors are no doubt correct in warning us not to touch incurable wounds, and I am presumably taking chances in preaching as I do to a people which has long lost all sensitivity and no longer conscious of its infirmity, is plainly suffering from mortal illness. Let us therefore understand by logic, if we can, how it happens that this obstinate willingness to submit has become so deeply rooted in a nation that the very love of liberty now seems no longer natural. In the first place, All would agree that if we led our lives according to the ways intended by nature and the lessons taught by her, we would be intuitively obedient to our parents. Later, we should adopt reason as our guide and become slaves to nobody. Concerning the obedience giving instinctively to one's father and mother, we are in agreement, each one admitting himself to be a model, as to whether reason is born with us or not. That is a question loudly discussed by academicians and treated by all schools of philosophers. For the present, I think I do not err in stating that there is in our souls some native seed of reason, which, if nourished by good counsel and training, flowers into virtue, but which, on the other hand, if unable to resist the vices surrounding it, is stifled and blighted. Yet, surely, if there is anything in this world clear and obvious, to which one cannot close one's eyes, it is the fact that nature, handmaiden of God, governess of men, has cast us all in the same mold in order that we may behold in one another companions, or rather brothers. If in distributing her gifts nature has favored some more than others with respect to body or spirit, she has nevertheless not planned to place us within this world as if it were a field of battle, and has not endowed the stronger or the cleverer in order that they may act like armed brigands in a forest and attack the weaker. One should rather conclude that in distributing larger shares to some and smaller shares to others, nature has intended to give occasion for brotherly love to become manifest. Some of us having the strength to give help to others who are in need of it. Hence, since this kind of mother has given us the whole world as a dwelling place, has lodged us in the same house, has fashioned us according to the same model, so that in beholding one another we might almost recognize ourselves, since she has bestowed upon us all the great gift of voice and speech, of fraternal relationship, thus achieving by the common and mutual statement of our thoughts a communion of our wills. And since she has tried in every way to narrow and tighten the bond of our union and kinship, since she has revealed in every possible manner her intention not so much to associate us as to make us one organic whole, there can be no further doubt that we are all naturally free, inasmuch as we are all comrades. Accordingly, it should not enter the mind of anyone that nature has placed some of us in slavery, since she has actually created us all in one likeness. Therefore, it is fruitless to argue whether or not liberty is natural, since none can be held in slavery without being wronged. And in a world governed by a nature which is reasonable, there is nothing so contrary as an injustice. Since freedom is our natural state, we are not only in possession of it, but have the urge to defend it. Now, if perchance some cast a doubt on this conclusion and are so corrupted that they are not able to recognize their rights and inborn tendencies, I shall have to do them the honor that is properly theirs and place, so to speak, brute beasts in the pulpit to throw light on their nature and condition. The very beasts, God help me, if men are not too deaf, cry out to them, "Long live liberty!" Many among them die as soon as captured, just as the fish loses life as soon as he leaves the water. So do these creatures close their eyes upon the light and have no desire to survive the loss of their natural freedom. If the animals were to constitute their kingdom by rank, their nobility would be chosen from this type. Others, from the largest to the smallest, when captured, put up such a strong resistance by means of claws, horns, beak, and paws, that they show clearly enough how they cling to what they are losing. afterward in captivity, they manifest by so many evident signs their awareness of their misfortune, that it is easy to see they are languishing rather than living, and continue their existence more in lamentation of their lost freedom than in enjoyment of their servitude. What else can explain the behavior of the elephant who, after defending himself to the last ounce of his strength and knowing himself on the point of being taken, dashes his jaws against the trees and breaks his tusks, thus manifesting his longing to remain free, as he has been, and proving his wit and ability to buy off the huntsman in the hope that through the sacrifice of his tusks he will be permitted to offer his ivory as a ransom for his liberty. We feed the horse from birth in order to train him to do our bidding, yet he is tamed with such difficulty that when we begin to break him and he bites the bit, he rears at the touch of the spur as if to reveal his instinct and show by his actions that if he obeys, he does so not of his own free will, but under constraint. What more can we say? Even the oxen under the weight of the yoke complain, and the birds in their cage lament. As I expressed it some time ago, toying with our French poesy, for I shall not hesitate in writing to you, O Langa, to introduce some of my verses, which I never read to you because of your obvious encouragement, which is quite likely to make me conceited. And now, since all beings, because they feel, suffer misery in subjection and long for liberty, since the very beasts, although made for the service of man, cannot become accustomed to control without protest, what evil chance has so denatured man that he, the only creature really born to be free, lacks the memory of his original condition and the desire to return to it? There are three kinds of tyrants. Some receive their proud position through elections by the people, others by force of arms, others by inheritance. Those who have acquired power by means of war act in such wise that it is evident they rule over a conquered country. Those who are born to kingship are scarcely any better, because they are nourished on the breast of tyranny, suck in with their milk the instincts of the tyrant, and consider the people under them as their inherited serfs, and according to their individual disposition, miserly or prodigal, they treat their kingdom as their property. He who has received the state from the people, however, ought to be, it seems to me, more bearable, and would be so, I think, were it not for the fact that as soon as he sees himself higher than the others, flattered by that quality which we call grandeur, he plans never to relinquish his position. Such a man usually determines to pass on to his children the authority that the people have conferred upon him, and once his heirs have taken this attitude, strange it is how far they surpass other tyrants in all sorts of vices, and especially in cruelty, because they find no other means to impose this new tyranny, than by tightening control and removing their subjects so far from any notion of liberty that even if the memory of it is fresh, it will soon be eradicated. Yet, to speak accurately, I do perceive that there is some difference among these three types of tyranny. But as for stating a preference, I cannot grant there is any. For although the means of coming into power differ, still the method of ruling is practically the same. Those who are elected act as if they were breaking in bullocks. Those who are conquerors make the people their prey. Those who are heirs plan to treat them as if they were their natural slaves. In connection with this, let us imagine some newborn individuals neither acquainted with slavery nor desirous of liberty, ignorant indeed of the very words. If they were permitted to choose between being slaves and free men, to which would they give their vote? There can be no doubt that they would much prefer to be guided by reason itself than to be ordered about by the whims of a single man. The only possible exception might be the Israelites, who, without any compulsion or need, appointed a tyrant. I can never read their history without becoming angered and even inhuman enough to find satisfaction in the many evils that befell them on this account. But certainly all men, as long as they remain men, before letting themselves become enslaved, must either be driven by force or led into it by deception, conquered by foreign armies, as were Sparta and Athens by the forces of Alexander, or by political factions, as when at an earlier period the control of Athens had passed into the hands of Pisistrates. When they lose their liberty through deceit, they are not so often betrayed by others as misled by themselves. This was the case with the people of Syracuse, chief city of Sicily, when in the throes of war and heedlessly planning only for the present danger. They promoted Denis, their first tyrant, by entrusting to him the command of the army, without realizing that they had given him such power that on his victorious return, this worthy man would behave as if he had vanquished not his enemies, but his compatriots, transforming himself from captain to king, and then from king to tyrant.